I had a conversation with my field instructor on what it looks like to engage with clients and their families, and then how we can reflect on those, and then the skills that we already have, how we can use the skills to better engage with our clients. So the first thing that we talked about was what was empathy, especially so we're a residential facility and we treat kids that have been removed from the foster care system for their outbursts and behaviors. We take private placements that are post-adoption. And so those kids, we actually deal a lot more with their families because their reunification plan is to go back home to their families that have already adopted them. We deal a lot less with families of the kids that are in foster care, just because most of the time if they've disrupted from a foster home, coming to CCHO, they're not returning to that foster home, they're returning to a different foster home. So with kids in the system, we really deal with their county workers. We don't often deal with their families unless if they're getting close to discharge and a family has been identified, then we work with that family to make the best discharge plan that we can make. So engaging with clients and families with empathy, reflection, and interpersonal skills. So that looks like when you sit down with a client, greeting them, asking them how their day was, like kind of just getting into things, and then knowing my favorite thing to do, especially like, so I'm interning with the older girls therapist. So sitting with, I'm doing things with him. He's not, what, I don't know. Okay. That's where I get my clients from, is the older girls cottage. So for my internship. So when I sit down with the girls, I kind of like to just preface myself with how has their day gone. Most of the times I already know this information before I even sit down with them, because I see them up in school, and then I hear about how group went. Excuse me. And then after that, I hear just kind of like what's going on. We get a lot of case note emails, so we kind of already know like how their night went, how their day's gone so far, before even we get to the point of meeting with them. So I like to sit down with them and just kind of like ask them like, is there anything you want to talk about? And then sometimes they'll say yeah, sometimes they'll say no. If there's an issue going on the floor, I already know how they feel about the issue because most of the time they've made it known. And so just kind of relating with them on that aspect, like, yeah, I understand why that would make you frustrated. But what are some other ways that we can work through this? Reading their body language is a really good way to have empathy, because you can kind of, you can tell like if they're tense or if they're slouched or if they're distracted on something else. Just like having an open mind to them and knowing like, oh yeah, they're really struggling right now. Reflecting on my interactions with them is something that I like to do, just to make sure that like it was clean cut, and that if there was anything that was like in question, maybe that I said the wrong way or like didn't phrase it well enough, like reflecting it through with them and making sure that like I go back and tell them. Interpersonal skills, I am pretty like straightforward and like clean cut, cold. So I'm not like sugarcoating much of anything, which can be seen as like a deficit skill for being a therapist, but also as a good skill, because like the kids are never going to have to question what I'm saying, because it's always going to be the truth, and the straight truth, not like anything that could be questionable about what was being said. And just knowing how they're feeling before they even come in is something else that I feel like is a skill that people should have. The personal strengths that align with interpersonal skills and values when engaging with a client. I think the being cold cut is a strength. Also just like the presence that you have when you're in the room with them, the leadership skills that you have, and the skills that they see you having with the other staff that you're working with, or because our kids see everything, because they're here all the time. And so just making sure that like my interactions with staff are those of, we really embody Christ because we're a Christian organization, like those of Christ and like what he would want and how he would want to model relationships for kids that come from hard places that don't often see solid relationships. Um, I also think I'm pretty good at like building rapport with the kids. I try really hard to like get in as soon as I can with them, just because it makes life easier. I'm on campus a lot because I teach during the day, but then I stay at night to do my internship. And I pick up a lot of shifts also like on the cottage side. So I'm up at the school. But just like building that rapport and spending time with the kids, going on outings when they get to go, and different things like that is another skill that I have and something that I think that I'm pretty good at. And that carries over to like engaging with their families if they're a private placement and make sure that like we're reaching out to them like about school. But then also like in the therapy side of things, engaging when their county workers reach out to me about school, how school's going, when their home districts reach out to me like, hey, what is so-and-so learning? How is things going? Doing their IEPs and stuff is a great way to connect with those people before I even write the IEP, just kind of like touching base with them quarterly. Engaging with families is something that I necessarily do not get to do often in this job, but something in my previous position at public school that I got to do a lot. I would call home almost every single day. Not bad phone calls. I would try to call a different parent every single day, just say like a positive about their kid. I sent notes home in the mail all the time because usually when you're getting a call, it's not good. And so I was able to like buffer those relationships with the parents because of calling home when things were going good and then also having to call home when things were bad. So moving into a therapist internship role, that's something that I'd like to carry over of like reaching out to their counties like, hey, Joe's doing really great in his program and therapy and different things like that. We do send home weekly progress reports, which is a great way to engage with families in counties weekly. But just having like empathy with the county worker too of like, hey, this is something that came up. They're really struggling. Do you have any ideas? Just like including them, make it whole team working for the kid, not just us working for the kid. These skills are important in the field setting, just because especially if like I don't stay residential, learning all the side of residential things is important because that's my internship and that's what I'd like to do, is to be a primary therapist on campus, but also like taking all of the skills that I've learned here because we communicate frequently with the people that have custody of the kids and we are in contact all the time with their schools and contact all the time with their counties, and with our whole team program that's working with them. It's important to like, to make sure that that gets carried over into whatever I do end up doing. And so using these skills of like having empathy, reading the room, trying to get as much knowledge as I can about the kid before they come to session, day to day, making sure that I'm following up with the kid on things, putting in goals with the kid, making sure that I keep everything clean cut and straightforward so that they never question news that I have to deliver to them, or things that they talk about, like being 100% honest with them because they're never going to have to ask if I'm lying. And it takes time for them to learn that, but I do a pretty good job of proving myself, to not be lying to them about things. But in the social work field in general, just like making sure that you have strong communication, you don't feel for people, so you don't like cry when they tell you something sad, because that's not going to make a good therapist. But like that you know what's coming, and that you can identify those emotions with them and for them if they need it. And then also just making sure, so we have communication, the empathy piece, and then making sure that everything is like straight cut for them. And that's not how that's how social work works. Like we know that there's a bunch of different branches of social work, but all of them involve a human life, and maintaining the best possible outcome for that person. So just making sure that like all of our intentions are clean and pure was something that my field instructor and I talked about, because we have a bigger impact than we often think that we do. And we need to make sure that we're using that to the best of our ability, and the best of what God has called us to do in this field of work.